Hey there, welcome to this fully narrated real-time tutorial where I'm going to draw this little fantasy character here. This is an opportunity for me to share with you my process for how I create this type of illustration from start to finish in Photoshop. Let's get started. Alright, just quickly, my name's Tim McBurney. I've been a professional artist for 20 years and a professional drawing teacher for quite some time. And I'm here to help you draw cool stuff from your imagination, to embrace the challenge of drawing, and to master the craft of line and color illustration. Now, if this line and color style illustration, the type of work that I do, is interesting to you and you want to learn how I do what I do, check out my free quick start guide. It goes over my tips and advice and step-by-step how I use Photoshop to create the types of images that you're going to see me create right now in this video. It just goes over that stuff in a little bit more detail. So if you've got any questions, feel free to check that out. And that should get you started. It comes with all the Photoshop brushes and Photoshop documents and things that I use, again, in these types of tutorials. Other than that, let's jump in and get started. Alright, so again, we are faced with a blank page. And here, again, I always say this and then I end up spending hours and hours and hours on some really complicated thing, but I am going to try and keep this to be more of a sketchy thing where, again, we're just going to spend a little bit of time. So just starting a rough sketch with a big sort of brush. Again, I like this kind of square brush. And again, I'm starting big because I want to make sure that if I ever try and hit some detail, that it doesn't work. Basically, that's what I want. That's the goal here. And again, this really depends where I'm at. How warmed up am I? What do I feel? I need to do to kind of support the type of drawing that I want to do. But yeah, this basic tactic is one of the the old digital art tricks. Is you just kind of make the brush big enough that you sort of can't mess up. You can't accidentally sort of go into detail. And yeah, so that means that I can just kind of like sketch around. Now, again, my sort of plan is that I'm going to draw some kind of, let's flip this, some kind of little sort of goblin type character. Again, I like doing this because they're kind of small. And I think when they are small, they're kind of, a little bit easier to draw, a little bit quicker to draw. And also, if I'm just kind of sketching around doing something like this, then it just means, you can have a little bit more fun with the anatomy sometimes. Again, sometimes I find that is a really sort of good thing to try, right? Again, just doing stuff that's a little bit more forgiving and a little bit more cartoony. But with that said, again, I'm just playing around, trying to sort of keep it loose, trying to think about sort of a pose. Right, massing in. Massing in again is like a weird sort of term, but it's sort of what I call where we're just sort of trying to build those forms by sort of scribbling around, right? We're trying to sort of find the mass or the shape of something, and again, it's less about sort of structure and just more about sort of trying to find the overall kind of like space and size that things are going to be. So again, I want this guy to be somewhat again, to have some appeal. Don't want him to be too sort of gross or anything like that. Again, I kind of want these hands to be a little bit more stylized, a little bit bigger. I'm not sure. Again, I feel like that's committing that sin of symmetry, which again is not, it's not one of those hard and fast rules, but basically, if you've got both hands or whatever doing the same thing, then that can sort of get annoying or boring, right? It's just sort of like, yeah, it's just, it is what it is, right? If things are symmetrical, then they're kind of boring, right? It kind of flattens things out. It's static. So, if we kind of vary it up, then we're more likely to get something kind of interesting. Again, so I'm sort of playing around here with some of with the tangents, right? Like trying to find position on the page, right? Is he holding something? Again, I often find these guys, little sort of characters like this, it's fun if they kind of got some big, giant, kind of heavy weapon. So when I'm doing this stuff, again, I'll often use sort of, a lot of big sort of construction marks, right? Like, again, I'm not sort of creating something that's finished. These marks are here for me to sort of think through it. So yeah, I feel like here, again, this sort of might work. We're getting sort of a weird tangent here potentially, but I don't mind that too much. So again, trying to think about where those eyes would be. Big sort of nose. And then again, sort of mouth as well. So again, still trying to find center. Find center. Find that center line. It's often one of the most important things. If you're interested in this structural stuff as well, I'll put a link to the another sort of free little guide that I've got, which talks about the how to sort of fix the top sort of head construction mistakes that people tend to make. And again, even if you're not sort of trying to solve your heads, it talks a lot about the concepts like the center line and how important that is. In that, one of the things that one of the most common things that people sort of often mess up when they're first starting out is, again, just not really putting in the center line, right? Like not finding center of whatever form you're drawing, right? You can think of that as, again, here we got a bowl, right? Again, sort of finding that center line, right? And again, understanding how to mirror stuff across that center line, right? So if we understand where center is, it solves so many drawing problems. So again, here I want to make this. I want to make this guy like a little bit more emotive, right? Sort of. So he's got a little bit more character. And again, this is, we're sort of 10 minutes in, just sort of sketching around. Not 100% sort of, convinced about this. There's lots of things you can sort of try, if that's sort of the case, right? Again, just, I'm doing a warp, which, I don't often do, but this is just going to sort of help me get that overall sort of shape a little bit better. a little bit better sorted. And I feel like here again, you know, what I really want to do is kind of give him a kind of dual wielding sort of clubs, or I don't know what you call them. And again, part of me sort of wants to, I did change that arm so that it wasn't sort of symmetrical, but yet part of me kind of wants to go back and kind of make it a little bit more like his arms are kind of out. Again, hard to know. I think again, I feel like I just want to try some different things. I'm not really feeling the symmetry there. Maybe again, one of these things can sort of be on the ground. Like that. Again, this hand. Bump. Don't. Boom. Yeah, something like that. Okay, let's keep flipping. Yeah. So again, I want that sort of mix of being like a monster and also being like a little bit sort of, again, sort of cute, approachable. Bit of that kind of critter vibe. Again, so doing some sort of design here as well. That's where again I'm going to sort of hit warp. See if kind of just pushing that character around, again, sort of compressing it. Can be like good to just sort of play around with the extremities. Right, and again, it's just sort of getting that shape there. I often like to give these sort of little characters, you know, like extensive sort of double chins. So just keep playing with that character. Now, again, this is one of those things where the more experience you get, the more sort of stuff you'll see at this stage. So, you know, when I was starting out, I would kind of, you know, easily kind of rush past this stage. Whereas now, you know, I'm much more likely to kind of, you know, stick with it for a little bit longer. Because again, part of what you're doing when you're sort of learning to draw stuff is you're kind of learning that sense for when, will this be enough? Is this interesting? Does this have enough character? Am I going to be able to sort of inject character, you know, when I sort of make this more detailed? Or, you know, is this going to start to kind of fall apart? And again, that's sort of what I have. I have those feelings of like, that's not interesting enough. There's not enough exaggeration there, right? There's not a fun sort of feeling to it, right? It feels a bit sort of serious. And personally, I have a really bad habit of kind of drawing very serious people. I think it's very hard to relate to, you know, like it's got to be the right type of project, you know. So I'm often sort of conscious about that, just trying to sort of push it forward a little bit. And also, honestly, can also just be a little bit of a byproduct of doing too much sort of structural technical drawing, right? It's very easy to kind of, especially doing these sort of live real-time demos. Yeah, it's very easy. It's just, these are the things I notice. Very easy to sort of get caught into trying to draw well so that I can sort of not make any mistakes. And that does tighten me up. You know what I mean? That means that I'm less likely to kind of just play around. So I'm consciously trying to sort of push that side of it a little bit more, right? Just do a little bit more exaggeration, just push it a little bit more and watch for that, right? Whenever I sort of find that I'm not doing something naturally, it's when I kind of, put a little reminder there. Hey, are you doing this? Or are you skipping it again, right? Anyway, so we'll see. And often, half the time when I do these live things, I sort of do all that, and then I'll just go and change it because I'm like, it just looks too silly, So who knows? We'll see. But anyway, I think we're probably up in terms of time. You know what I mean? Can't really afford to, right, to spend too much more time on it. Just trying to think about what's going to happen with these sort of arms and hands and things. So this is where, again, like I keep saying this, and it is really important, but you notice here I can just kind of draw through this, right? I'm drawing this kind of bomby knocker hammer thing, whatever it is. I don't know, not quite sure what it's going to be. Right, I'm sort of drawing that, and then I'm drawing this, and these lines go straight through each other, and it's so important, especially if you're trying to create character and energy, to be able to kind of just draw through, right? To ignore the final line that you're going to make, and to focus on the the line that's going to help you with construction. That's why drawing through and giving yourself that phase, again, the time to play, the time to kind of be like, oh, should it be like this? Let's sort of play with these lines and not worry about like, oh, but am I going to go over here? Is this going to go over there? Am I going to mess it all up? Those kind of things. Again, there's a flow you get into, right, when you're not fearing messing up the drawing quite as much. So again, I'm at this point, what I'm doing is I'm thinking, well, can I just start drawing? Can I just go to the next phase? That really is the question. Just thinking about, like, should I put some kind of strap on here? No, I think that's going to make it a little bit less clean. So again, I like the idea of kind of maybe a bit like eyes are not quite going in the right direction. Again, we'll see how much of this sort of anatomy I put in. Right, I don't need to put in all that anatomy. It might be better for it to kind of be a bit looser. But yeah, anyway, I think we'll be okay. Be good to figure out what's happening with these. All right, that's another one of those things, but can be a little bit hard to make up. And again, just really good to put some of these lines through. Right, make sure again we've got these lines through here. This might seem like kind of just messing stuff up, but again, what I need from this drawing is structure. What I need is to kind of make sure, like, does the head of the hammer, hit at right angles to the handle. And again, for to a certain degree, that was not happening. So again, we're dealing with a fuzzy version, but I want the fuzzy version to be correct. despite being fuzzy. And again, if I want to sort of construct in that, where does the hammer handle sort of come through, if it does, right? So again, I'm going to have that one sort of a bit more three-dimensional, right, coming at us. And again, there, I'm just going to put that sort of through line. All right, bam. And I can put in those. I can put in that. And here, let's see if we can put that little tail in there. So again, not really going to design out those sort of feet, but I am just going to sort of put in some structure. Again, make sure we're in a decent perspective. And again, this is another one of those really important things, is just check that the like where on the ground this hammer thing is going to be. So feel out the space and kind of be like, okay, so this is coming out here. All right, then that's coming out. I mean, I feel like this, again, it could come, right, like a little bit further forward in space maybe. But yeah, I think it's okay. Anyway, so I reckon we are ready to move forward. So what I'll do is, again, make a new white layer. We'll reduce the opacity of that. We'll make a new line. And we'll pick a, let's save that first. All right, there we go, saved. What brush we can use here? There we go. I think again, just the same one I normally use. I'm going to set it to about 60. We'll go to about sort of 15. And again, I find this gives me like a nice sort of mix of sort of size and pressure on this particular canvas size. So again, just sort of starting in the middle. I reserve the right to maybe go back and sort of edit some of these things out. All right, we'll sort of see how we go. Just putting in a few things. Can be hard to know how to, where to start if you're sort of creating something that you've designed. If it's something you've drawn before, you've often got, a bit of an idea how that goes. So again, just thinking about like how simple I want some of these things to be. So like that. Yeah. So again, I'm gonna, put a bit of tonality in here. Keep adding a few little bits here and there. Again, I'm trying to sort of find that center sort of anchor for the face, and trying to set the level of detail. And that sort of bit in the beginning is sort of quite tricky, right? Again, I'm sort of feeling that out, and here, again, I'm sort of seeing those marks I put down and, thinking, how do they fit in with the rest of it? Again, I couldn't tell you why, I have a feeling that, that sort of wasn't going to work. Again, this is, part of what happens when we, are just kind of making stuff up at a finished line sort of phase, right? And especially here, right? This is not, form that really makes a lot of sense, right? There's a lot of sort of weirdness here. By that I mean, I haven't sort of designed all of the form 100%. And also, sometimes these eyes are going to be a little bit cartoony, right? Like they're not, they don't exist 100% in three-dimensional space. Again, for better or worse, that's just kind of what is happening there. So again, just trying to get these kind of overlaps happening and see what sort of lines we can create. And as always, I am looking at this on a second monitor as well above, and that is very much helping to make some of these decisions. So you can see here, playing around with a little bit of broken line, right? I know where that sort of form overall is sort of going, but, the question is, how much of it do I need to draw all the time? How do I represent that? We don't need to put it all in. And again, you can do it with a straight line. You can see here again, I'm playing around with sort of some textures on those lines. There's not a lot of, rhyme or reason for that. Just kind of playing around. Playing around again, putting in some of these forms, seeing how they go, hoping that they kind of turn out well. Now again, if you're just sort of starting this out, then, jumping straight to finish lines is probably not the best thing to do. I always recommend, doing more construction work at the beginning when I'm doing these kind of real-time narrated tutorials. I'm very much, thinking of these as unplanned drawings, right? There is a sketchiness to them. And, if things get a little bit loose or, sort of doesn't work out, then that's kind of fine, right? It's probably just that, again, my ability to finish it is, going to be better than someone who's sort of starting out. So I can kind of make up some of these gaps. But, if you're starting out, then what I'd recommend is to just play around with, making this previous drawing more and more detailed. Sorting out some of these things, again, in a situation where you can play, where, you're not going to be married to the results. And again, that's how you sort of learn to do this. And slowly, bit by bit, the way that you get better at sort of making up nonsense is you kind of just leave some bits that you feel like you have control over. You just leave them less finished. And slowly you kind of learn to sort of say, hey, I can sort of make up this sort of thing, you know. I can't make up that sort of thing, you know. Sometimes you sort of do it and it won't work. But again, that's part of the learning sort of experience. And again, I think the main thing to do there is just to, you know, like stop. You know, if it's not working, go back, refine this, and then, you know, have another go. You've always got that option in your arsenal. All right. So yeah, I feel like, you know, there's like, I feel like that, you know, the face is kind of got that weird sort of fun, crazy sort of vibe. That's kind of what I wanted. You know, probably watching all those, you know, Jim Henson 80s puppet movies like Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, you know, the Brian Froud sort of influences, you know, what's coming through there. You know, again, huge influences. And that's what I was doing. I was trying to figure out this hair. What is going on here? So again, trying to find, you know, fun shapes, trying to make this, yeah, a little bit interesting. From a very sort of abstract, you know, line point of view. So again, let's think about what sort of lines we're actually going to put there. Putting in that belt. See if this kind of makes sense. I think I want like something going behind there, and then again this belt sort of going. It might be good if, yeah, maybe it's a bit more just like a rope or something. Trace that through. See if we can get this kind of, I don't even know what these things are that I always draw here. Some sort of weird sort of leather armor bit thing. Okay. Let's establish that one. Let's establish this one. Let's rotate. Where are we? I think we're looking down. Let's establish that one. Right, that's there. Trace that. Put that in. Alright, let's draw the sides. Tuck that in. Go around. Draw here. Not sure about this line. I'm still like, yeah, I don't feel like that's not working, but we can just, I mean, we can sort of cheat a bit, right? Can grab that, put that over. All right, what are we doing? I feel like, yeah, that. Again, this, so you can see again, that sort of side of it are not quite sort of sorted enough. But yeah, there's lots of things you can do though, right? I mean, I can make a new layer and do, exactly what I was sort of talking about, but, with way more precision, and have another stab at this. Again, I felt like it was going well, but then, yeah. Felt like that was going to end up being not accurate enough. And again, here, I'm going to make this sort of a funny shape. So not really sure what exactly is going on here, but just trying to make it feel kind of solid. And that. Some cracks in the, again, I don't know why there's cracks in the, this, maybe it meant to make it feel like it's kind of made of stone. Some knuckles. And let's get rid of that. Let's put this in. Again, not super important. I don't feel like anyone's gonna see that sort of stuff there. Maybe they will. Going around there. Some sort of stitching or something like that on. We can put some kind of pattern. Make it a little bit more interesting. Again, see if we can put some of these sort of patterns on the, alright, on here. Boom. Boom. And here, again, just going to assume that this tail actually does make sense here. Boom. Can get this to kind of line up. That doesn't. Again, got to get the right. I could move around physically and sort of solve that. Again, I feel like that's also a bit like a boring shape. But again, easier to rotate the page here. So there you go. I mean, that's the basic idea. Pretty stupid thing to be drawing. But that's half the fun. So again, here, I feel like I can sort of, add a little bit of construction-y stuff to what's going on. with these feet. Again, depending on how important something is to the finished, image, like how much it's in focus, which these feet are not in focus at all, you can, leave some little construction-y lines potentially, right? We can make them less, less finished, and it's probably not going to make a big difference. Again, those are the things you kind of, right? We kind of learn. Actually, he's only got 3 there, doesn't he? So we got 1. Right, so it'll be more like this. And so again, I'm not rating this sort of foot drawing here. Maybe if we kind of just get rid of it a little bit. If in doubt, black it out. Right? That is the battle cry of the working artist, and also people who are in a rush. But again, worth putting in some other little bits of texture, giving things a little bit of attention, closing some of those lines as well can be useful. Creating those shapes. Again, once we sort of got them sketched in, again, so you can see most of those sort of sketchy lines disappeared. Right, putting a few little sort of dirty marks around the place. Makes it feel as if this guy is not, super clean, which I think is kind of, part of his general motif. All right, this here, and get this hand in. Knuckle. Thumb. All right, so I've got the other bits of the thumb there. So again, it's similar to some of these things on the face, right? Like that's not a great drawing of a thumb, but hopefully it kind of does a bit of the job. So again, the idea here is we've got another one of these little straps or something going down there. And again, let's push some of these shadows here. Not even sure whether that hand position is even physically viable. Let's make sure we don't create weird nipple tangents. Yeah, and I don't know how much, how much use there is in sort of pushing, trying to draw anatomy and that sort of stuff here. But again, I can just add a few little bits and pieces, See what that looks like. That's the kind of thing that I'll evaluate later, right? Who knows whether that sort of thing is going to work or be good. So again, here. And got an ellipse here, not the best ellipse, but we'll see. So again, I'm having that feeling. I'm like, oh, that's probably not gonna work very well. We'll see. That. I'm just sort of transferring these marks so that when I come and try and put that. So here I'll try, I'll see what happens, right? If we do kind of keep putting stuff in there, right? Like keep putting detail in. Like does it get better? We'll sort of see what happens. Put a little shadow under here. All right, get it sort of relative to everything else. All right, maybe we could sort of erase that. So you sort of see with this one, probably what you start to see is, again, how, just adding that extra bit will sort of help. So here you can see again, this is where, probably more construction drawing would have been good, right? Because I can sort of see I've got this line here. Now a trick you can use is I'm going to make another layer, and I'm basically just going to trace this ellipse, and then I'm going to sort of move it over there. And then we basically just erase it. So at least that way I sort of know I'm getting like a similar type of ellipse, and then we'll just sort of copy that again. So this is all very, very rough, utilizing the Photoshop tools to help us draw. And again, I don't really need that one there. Let's go Control E, merge that down. So, if this needed to be a more technical thing, I'd probably be in more trouble there. Here, maybe I can get away with, some sort of rough lines and things like that. So again, not 100% sure about that. So yeah, I feel like that's a bit two-dimensional. So again, I feel like it can be very tricky to know what's going to make the difference. So again, not a fan of this. Yeah. So again, is it worth fiddling around with? We will see. Again, so the trick here is just not to go so far in terms of erasing stuff and using up brush strokes that we can't kind of just quickly undo it. Right? That's really that's the trick. And again, good way to do that is just sort of do one single selection and do an erase, because just delete it. That way we've only used up one right? One mark as opposed to one undo history, sorry, as opposed to, doing a whole bunch of physical undoing with a razor like this. Uses up more undo, so it's harder to go back on. So just testing. Alright, turning it upside down can be a good way to get a better read on the structure. And again, I think I'm like, we've run out of time to play around with it. So again, we'll just try and sort of, make that a little bit less distinct. The, transition there. And probably, again, I'll just sort of, we'll see what it looks like. Again, sometimes with these things, you get really bothered by it, and then at the end of the day, it doesn't make much difference. We'll see. All right, so I am, again, I'm not sure whether I should sort of put in the shadow there. I think I will do it as part of the painting process, put a shadow in there for all of that. So if we take that away, see what we've got. This can be a good opportunity. Again, if we just duplicate, can be a good opportunity to come through here once you can kind of see it all by itself without the sketch underneath, and just do another pass on some of these lines, get things a little bit more punchy. And just see whether we're sort of missing anything. And again, just checking what these things look like, like, is this helping? Right? You never know with it. A lot of times, those sorts of things don't help. But you're just going through closing lines, making life simple. And here where we've got connection points, I'm just going to sort of spot those little sort of blacks, just connect things a little bit better. Here again, play around with maybe putting a bit more of a key line around here. And again, I'm sort of roughing it up a little bit, because again, I feel like that's going to help me sort of sell the rough quality of it. Again, I don't often do that, put those darker lines around things in the foreground. I've just never been a huge fan of that, but I know a lot of people have success with it. Again, seeing whether maybe just adding a few more little bits of character here and there on this might help. Don't know. We'll see. Let's just see what it looks like. Again, it just feels a little bit, I feel like maybe I just want to get rid of this. Again, it just needs more asymmetry. Right, something like that. because again, I sort of want them to be different, right? The two things he's kind of holding. And it's sort of, the point there is that, you know, if I make them the same, then you're going to notice if I get it wrong. Whereas if I don't, then yeah, you won't. Right, so we got some stuff escaping somewhere, but that's alright. Oh yeah, it's probably there for sure. Yep, got a little gap there. So again, very simple flatting process because we closed all those lines. And there we go. So now just thinking about adding some super quick, simple color. Not sure what color the character should be. Let's put all these things in a group so they sort of disappear. Cool. Alright. So again, what is the general tonal sort of layout? What are we going to be working with? Again, keep stuff sort of bright. And again, you know, I do like the idea of it being sort of green, but maybe a bit more of like a gray green. So I am watching the actual sort of values here. You know, I'm watching, just making sure that those base colors I put down are a good degree of separation. So, you know, sort of 81 is the light versus, you know, sort of the skin tone is sort of a 60. So again, there's good separation between background and subject. And it still allows me to kind of go through here and put in some, you know, whiter whites, right? Like the teeth and the eyes and stuff. So very, very white teeth for such a little creepy creature, but I guess that's part of the fun, right? So I'm going to select this red, and I'm going to select a very low opacity. Now I'm going to select slightly less low opacity, just trying to put some of that kind of redness in the character. Now we're going to go again up to about 50%. We'll put some of that redness in the ears. Again, these are things that, you know, I've heard people talk about as being, you know, a little bit of, you know, sort of cheap, doing, you know, making all of the things like, you know, noses red and stuff like that. We're kind of, you know, highlighting the feeling of blood flow and that sort of thing in there. I just find with, and you know, I guess the idea there is, you know, you can sort of overdo it, right? Which I think is true, because not everyone actually looks like that. I feel like with cartoony stuff, the advantage there is that it does give you a lot of life, like a lot of feeling of, wow, there's something, you know, there's something sort of sophisticated there. It's not just 100% of a flat color. And yeah, I think that's sort of what I'm after there. Boom. So again, some sort of gold accents. This will be sort of a brownish color. Push the saturation a bit. See if this works. Yeah, there we go. Put that in. So you can see again, it's looking pretty sort of monotone. We'll see what we can do to make that more interesting as we go. So just putting in stuff that I know needs to be there, I know needs to change. That's all we're doing. Just going through. Putting in those little bits and pieces here and there, just filling things out. And, you know, the more we do that, the more we sort of complete, the more that, you know, it's like one of those coloring books, right? It's sort of, you get to a point where, you know, I'm making actual decisions that kind of need to be made, whereas in the beginning it's more a matter of doing the things that are obvious and just seeing what it looks like. Does it look good? Does it look not look good? What is the deal? And here again, what we need is like maybe, so it's tricky to know again when you're in gray land, like what's going to make it feel more, you know, more like it needs to, you know, more metallic. So you can see there again, like I want it to feel more gray, but it's tricky to know how to make it more gray. You know, so if I sort of think, well, more like, you know, it's metallic, so it should be sort of bluer. Right, I could maybe pick, you know, a color that's a little bit bluer. But sometimes when everything's a little bit warm, you actually, you know, sort of might want to just desaturate it and go a little bit more yellow. So again, that, you know, be two sort of options for how to handle that, right? Do that again. Which one? I feel like the blue is good. It does separate things out. So I've basically got like sort of, you know, bluey, greeny, red, but very sort of monotone. You know, not a lot of sort of harsh color, but I am keeping everything fairly light. You know, so everything's sort of, there's not much, you know, this rope here is below 50% on the value scale, but that's about it. There's not a lot of other stuff that is. Except, yeah, this. See if we mix a bit of brown in there. That might make sense. Go back up to 100% opacity. Let's put in these gross toenails, claws, what have you. See if we can differentiate the end of that wood there. This one doesn't have that. But yeah, maybe like, you know, some of these bits are kind of like wood, right? Some are like wrapping, and it's all a bit messy. I feel like this was meant to be metallic. Yeah, so again, that might be a bit much. Let's push these down a bit. Cool. All right. Now I do feel like it would be good to separate some of these things out. So I'm just going to select them and we'll see what happens. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of just separate them out. See what happens. We'll take a stab at it, take a guess. Yeah, I mean, I think that's all right. Let's try, just grab this and let's see if we make it brighter. So just separating out the pants from this kind of little skirt thing. And I guess the other option would be to go the opposite way, right? Make it a bit darker. I think darker actually works better for me right now. So these are the kind of things I'm doing. I'm just scooting around the image, making these types of decisions. Again, you know, does that go there? Does that work? And these are all just things, you know, when you're sort of designing something for the, you know, and you're sort of doing it on the fly, you've sort of got to just go through and try and make, you know, decisions that sort of make sense, right? Again, let's try grab that. Again, see if we can separate out the, again, a bit of that sort of fleshy underbelly. No, I think it's better if it's just flat. So yeah, you can see that is a good example of how I would kind of handle all of this. All right, put in shadow here. All right, where we've got kind of this down here. There we go. And again, I'm going to try and break it up a little bit. Just again with this particular brush, yeah, you can get a lot of texture if you kind of just go at it really, really lightly. New layer. Now again, let's try similar sort of process to what I would do on most sort of images. Let's just create, you know, a simple kind of image frame. And again, you know, using some sort of, you know, super simple mark making, right? But the goal there is pretty simple. Make it feel a little bit more energetic, right? Give it some sort of motion and kind of emotion. So, you know, a little bit of directionality, a little bit of brush strokes in the background kind of just helps to make it feel as if there's something there. And again, I find that, you know, working around the images is much more effective than trying to sort of copy paste something in. Because it just makes it feel a little bit more sort of painted and stuff. Now you can see I'm sort of going over the silly shadow that I did. Yeah, I don't know whether any sort of blending mode is going to save me, but I know that this will sort of save me if I sort of turn contiguous off and we just sort of grab all that. I can basically replicate that thing there. Just drag it above. And there, again, problem solved. Because I think really that shadow should have been on its own layer to begin with. So again, there we go. make sort of roughen this up a bit. Create some more interesting patterns. Again, same sort of technique I use for all of these sort of quick images again. And, you know, it's just because it's like, well, you know, I feel like it would kind of work, right? And, you know, if I get bored of it, I'll come up with something else. It's that simple. There's not a lot of kind of, you know, it's not that I think it's that good. It's just that, you know, I kind of think it'll work, and you know, it's not like it matters that much. Again, no one's gonna care. I don't think so, anyway. All right. So again, just creating like a, you know, roughed up sort of texture. We can create. Again, you know, what? That's a bit strong. All right, create a bit of a texture on that character. And yeah, there we go. Again, super simple little guy. All right, let's finish this guy off. So I'm going to do similar again to what I would normally do. We can play around with some simple gradients. Let's get an airbrush going. And think about how we can just basically increase the power of the silhouette here. Now, can be good to, you know, do this with a pure gradient tool. Oh, I just noticed I want to give his hair a different color. I don't know what sort of color, but yeah, probably maybe just kind of a little bit of a brown color, maybe. See what that looks like. Yeah, I'm just going to sort of pick, actually just going to use a lighter version of this. Maybe take the saturation down. Just so it sort of doesn't, just so it sort of blends in a little bit better. Maybe darker would be better. Again, darker kind of frames it a little bit nicer. Luckily we caught that. Sometimes I don't catch those things, you know, you just keep you know, rendering away and forget to flat some super major important thing. Yeah, so back to airbrush, and again, just sort of darken that down. But again, you know, it doesn't have to. See, I've got like, you know, that sort of background color as well. A lot of what I normally do when I'm sort of, you know, using those gradients is just to kind of blend these colors together. This is such a simple trick, but you know, it's often one of those things that I feel like people are missing. The theory behind it is that you have ambient sort of lighting, you know, just sort of room lighting, that kind of means that whatever kind of is in the background kind of will diffuse color-wise throughout the entire scene, you know. So if you have red walls, right, everything's gonna be slightly affected by that red. And the application of that is very simple. It just means that often what I'm going to do is put, you know, some of the background color into the character and some of the character color into the background, just to homogenize those colors a little bit. And again, I just find that kind of works to make things feel a little bit more realistic, which is a good counterpoint to something so cartoony. All right, so I might put another, maybe see what we can do. Just playing around with, again, a little bit more color. That's way too intense. Just sort of push that down. But yeah, so there we go. So again, a couple of quick sort of gradients. It's just sort of, you know, increasing the silhouette there. And we can do similar thing with the background. Again, just sort of try and push the values there down a little bit. Just sort of simple vignetting, right? We're just kind of putting a little bit more focus on the character's face. And again, you know, this is probably a little bit sort of extreme. Again, I'm going to go down, sort of erase that, right? Make it a little bit less extreme. And again, I might sort of make the ground here still have a little bit of brightness to it. But I will then go through and again, just kind of fade off that shadow, or give it dimension. That's probably the best way to put it, the shadow. Just sort of giving it a change from sort of, you know, front to back so that it doesn't feel quite as static and flat. Again, that's a big part of what these gradients are doing, is just giving stuff a little bit of movement, right? So nothing's quite flat. And again, what I find is that works quite nicely when we do compare it to stuff that is actually flat. So again, here, just doing a texture pass sort of over everything, which will kind of further sort of flatten stuff. And again, to me, it's just all a matter of sort of pushing it back, seeing what works. You know, again, I often sort of say, you know, if we kind of push some of those, you know, character colors into the background. Again, I'll be sort of pulling this back a bit, right? Because again, I feel like it's sort of making stuff a little bit sort of flat. But again, part of what I'm also doing is, you know, flattening out the image a little bit. And the goal is that then once I've kind of pushed the colors together and gotten a little bit of interest going there, you know, I feel like I'll just take out some of that texture around the eyes. It's just looking a bit weird. And then what we can do is play around with, you know, increasing the levels this way, right? So we can, you know, go back and adjust those. Now, there is a limit to how much you can do in terms of pushing or pulling the image in this way. You know, there's only so much you can kind of push and pull an image from a contrast perspective without it kind of, you know, starting to sort of fall apart. So you do need to kind of get there a little bit. You need to sort of get there a little bit before you sort of crunch stuff down. It can be tricky to just kind of really move the needle and sort of, you know, get that right contrast. But again, if you just need to kind of crunch it a little bit, this is often all you need. So again, still thinking about how I'm gonna adjust things. I feel like pushing the skin a little bit down and then getting some of these. Again, what I want to do is kind of really push the reds in the eyes and stuff, and the tongue. So I think I'll just, that's a tricky one. So I'm gonna sort of isolate it first. All right, there we go, and just gonna increase the, right, so it's really only affecting those few areas. And then I can go around and sort of play around with, like, well, do we want it to be kind of more magenta? Right, and again, I do feel like slightly more magenta, or right? Like not sort of orange. I want it to kind of be a bit more sort of blood red and fleshy. So again, you can see the difference if I turn those off, turn those on. We're just getting a little bit more color contrast between the skin. Right, I pushed that down, made it a little bit more green, blue, again, very subtly. And then I've just sort of punched the contrast on the red things, and that just gives us that focus. Now, interestingly enough, you can kind of see here, I mean, one of the things that's kind of happening, I feel like a little bit too much is, I feel like that we're getting this kind of, this halo is just a bit sort of strong. Yeah, don't kind of want it to be quite that obvious. Just gonna take that down a bit. And the reason for that is, you know, if you sort of see it as a thumbnail and there's too much of a halo there, it can kind of feel a bit weird. Yeah, anyway. So again, now we can kind of think about, well, now I've sort of created that color contrast. Now we can sort of think about, well, what would look good overall, right? Let's sort of push some of these darker colors down, and now I'm going to sort of select, right, these kind of darker, blacker colors. And again, that's just gonna, if we sort of increase, right, so that's just, if we sort of turn it off, that's very hard to see. But to me, that just, again, gives it that, this is that higher fidelity sort of color stuff where if you're just sort of casually glancing at it, you're not going to care too much that, you know, these darks are a little bit sort of pushed. But for my money, it's worth sort of playing around with those things. Now, again, I don't know how much I want to play around with some of these other things, but once you're sort of at a kind of a good point, it can be fun to just sort of, you know, play around and sort of see what happens. You know, like, does this make it better or worse, or, you know, whatever. That's not really sort of working. Let's delete that. But again, it might be good to pull these background colors sort of down a bit. Again, this is also going to create a little bit more color contrast. Now, again, it's not really working on the character so much. So again, we can just drag it below the character. You know, and that might be a good way to sort of go there. Again, turn it off, on. See what's happening there. Or the other alternative, if we move it back up there, is we can just sort of select the character, right, and yeah, there we go. Right, and sort of erase them out of the mask. And again, that might be a bit of an easier way to do it. So I feel like there's a little bit too much contrast sort of over here. Right, like there's just a bit too much sort of noise there. And again, I'm also going to try and sort of put a bit more of a fade out on some of these sort of areas. And I'll go in there with an eraser and kind of pull out the thing that I want. But you can think of this almost as like sort of depth of field, right? If we turn that off, turn it on, again, it's really just sort of pulling, that's decreasing contrast throughout the image, right? And then I'm going to go back and sort of pull back some sort of contrast here and there. And basically, yeah, my goal is pretty simple, right? I just want focus and contrast to be around the face. And you can see that, again, I was sort of drawing this hammer thing. I don't think it's the best, but you can see that now, again, our eye is really sort of drawn towards that kind of character there. So again, I feel like that is, all right, that is sort of good. So again, just playing around with that background. Again, that might be something that's worth doing, maybe reducing some of that texture. I do feel like maybe, right, there might be a little bit too much of that texture here and there. So again, we can select the character, right, sort of bring them forward a little bit more. There's a million different ways you can adjust colors and fiddle around with things in Photoshop. And that's, to me, like what sort of, makes it good. Is that, if you can kind of think about, oh, how about I try this? If you can think of it kind of working, then it's kind of likely that, that sort of method is going to work. So again, we can sort of push that even further. Now, at what point, should we stop those? I think those things are hard to tell, right? Again, I have a bad habit of kind of just fiddling around with these things for ages, but I feel like that sort of idea is working pretty well. It's like, oh, that's right, he was flipped before. I wonder whether he still works flipped the other way. No, that doesn't work. So you can see, I feel like the face drawing doesn't work quite as well flipped. So we'll keep him this way, and we'll flip the signature and put it sort of over there somewhere. Again, not entirely sure. Just making it a little bit more subtle. And then we can add our sort of texture. And of course we can also, think about roughing things up a little bit more. Get rid of that, digital, that sort of heavy digital look, where everything's kind of automatically clean. Again, when it comes to texture and, all these things, as I always say, we come from a history artistically of it being very challenging to create cleanness. And I think one of the challenges we face now is kind of the opposite with digital, is, how to create natural sort of randomness, instead. So, that's often one of the challenges we face at the moment is, how do we add some of that randomness back in, that you get, with sort of printing stuff and, traditional sort of canvases and those kind of bits and pieces. So again, that's pretty much it. What I might do is play around with those sort of levels again. Oh, Photoshop doesn't like that. That's normally a sign that Photoshop's kind of struggling if it can't build the histogram. So again, just pushing that contrast. And once you've got those, those basic arrangements there, let's invert that and we'll just add it to the focal area. Yeah, once you've got those basic things there, all your contrasts, it becomes a lot easier to just get it all, just dialed in once you push and pull it. So what you can sort of push and pull it up and down the value scale quite a bit. You can add the levels, you can sort of bring it back if you get the balance right in the beginning. So again, I'm not sure exactly which one I'll sort of, I'll sort of pick in terms of color and that sort of thing. But that's often what I'll do, just play around with those little sort of subtleties and see how we go. But anyway, there you have it. A little goblin creature. That's all I've got. As I said, if you want to know a little bit more about, how I've done this in terms of, the specifics of, my process, check out the Quick Start Guide. The link will be in the description. Or there's also, a lot of other, stuff on the channel in terms of information about textures and other little sort of Photoshop tricks and general advice. Anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll catch you around. Happy drawing.